Today we're going to be creating a campsite map. So when the party are traveling from town to town, city to city, and they stop overnight in a forest or wherever, they have a nice little campsite map they can look at. And what's going to make it a little bit different is we're going to create this campsite map for the nighttime, and then we're going to create the same map in the day. And I've never recreated the same map in two time periods, in 2 times of the day. So that should be pretty exciting. As always, I'd start with the ground texture, but rather than going with the standard, I wanted to mess around with some textures I'd never used before. I mean, I've never even used this one. This is so much texturing for, so much detail just for, a single, just for like the base, the color of the ground. It's kind of crazy. Definitely not going to use that, but definitely interesting to look at that it's got like logs and stuff like that. But the forest floor textures, something I've never used because I think they just have too much business. But for this campsite map, could be interesting. Even wanting to pick something a bit crazier, I still picked one of the more neutralish grassy dirt textures. But there was something off about it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Rather than dwelling on this though, I just moved on to the tree line. We've got a tree line here, right? And that's not super interesting. I think it's kind of an okay tree line, but I think we can get more bushes. Like, this could be one thing we do, where we have a sort of dense tree line like this. We also could scatter in a couple different options. So we could say have like a fall bush, which kind of looks like a tree. And we can sort of scatter these in the mix. No. Let's get the trees. What am I doing? I think we can scatter these in the mix to diversify the tree line's coloring. Adding in a wider range of colored trees definitely helped for it to pop a lot more, but the shape of the tree line was looking rigid. Now this is a bit square. It's a little like haircut curtains. So that's okay, but maybe what we can do is we can extend this out a bit like this. I gave this a little fix and it was looking better, but once again, it felt like something to come back to. Next, it was on to the actual campfire area, which I wanted to be a juxtaposing dirt patch. Unfortunately, the vision was looking grim as the highly detailed grass textures combined with the highly detailed dirt textures were really hard to meld together, and having one being detailed and one not looked really weird as well. So I'd reset, go with the simpler stuff, but wanted to have the detailed textures in there a bit. I definitely think I need to fix the textures. I just keep looking at it and it keeps like throwing me off. So what I'm thinking maybe is, and I think the simplicity is going to work better, but I'm thinking we maybe do something like this, and then we do have this sort of peeking out in the background. So that little bit of complexity is there. So you can sort of see that it's a bit more textured, but it's not too overpowering. Okay, I kind of like that. I think that's sort of a nicer vibe. For the campsite section, I would go with the classic darker dirt on the bottom and lighter dirt on the top. And soon enough, it was coming together. There's some things we need to work on. The first thing is I think we need to have more organic sort of bush and trees scattered around this area. So it's not just sort of a rectangular clearing. So that's thing one, to try to make it a bit more of an organic sort of wilderness setting. The second thing we need to work on is adding details. Okay, great, we have a tent, we have a campsite, but what we want to go through is add like pots and pans and the sort of proof or the sort of visualization of like a party actually being here. So those are the 2 main things we're going to work on. So I think a thing we can do immediately is have a couple more bushes, like a little bit more plant life. And I think we can also like pull some trees out. So, there's something like that on the map. And there's like a tree that's there. Bringing the forest clearing into the camp area was a great move, but we also needed to do the opposite, shed some of the clearing away. I think having this openness is really working, and we're going to keep working on it, but even in the small sort of way that we've done it, having it not just be like thick bracket of trees all the way around the outside, having it be like more dense patches, and there are little workways through, and we will keep deleting trees, but I think actually in this case, like less is going to be more. This small change did a lot to make the whole area feel more like a natural clearing and less like a portrait of a campsite indicated to be in a forest by a border of trees. A small thing to note about the trees is that I was purposefully putting them on different layers from each other, some above, some below. This created the effect that they were different heights and brought the artifice of verticality to the forest. I also wanted to add in some stone so the whole forest wasn't just a bunch of plants. I think maybe at the moment what I'm feeling is it's like, oh, it's just a lot of trees, it's a lot of clumps, does it look a little bit inorganic? And I think the answer is sort of like yes. The only thing I might add is like a rock. And then maybe we can scatter around some small rocks as well around the base there. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think those rocks kind of add to it, and those small rocks kind of make a difference. And maybe we even chuck some like pebbles on the side here like this. Ooh, okay. I think this is kind of adding it to add these little pebbles. Maybe we have another sort of much smaller rock somewhere over here. Maybe it can be sort of blocking the path a little bit. And then we can have some pebbles coming off it. Yeah, okay. I'm really liking the way these pebbles have added to it. The rocks and the pebbles, they're adding some definition. They're making it a bit more, I don't know, something. The last tweak to the actual scenery would be splicing in a few snow variants of the dark green trees. This added that extra little bit of color and would put the tree line in a place I was genuinely really happy with. A far cry from its original monochromatic rectangle shape from 20 minutes prior. With this, we're now done with the ground, the trees, the rocks, and from here on out, it's all about adding the party's affects. After looking through the available items, I quickly stumbled onto the idea of clumping items together to represent specific classes and possible related personalities. I like the idea of someone sitting here waiting. Maybe we can have that and a sword, just a short sword like that. And then maybe we can have like a lute. I don't know if this is coming across, but to me, this is a bit of a bard build. You have your sort of ranged weapon, you have your sort of short sword or dagger, and then you have a bit of a lute. And trying to tell a little of those narratives like, oh, there's a little bit of a bard in the party, or there's a little bit of a two-handed weapon dude in the party. I think that's the sort of energy I want to have come across. And maybe we try to do the same thing over here, where it's like this person's packed up, and then we have some books, and we try to get maybe a bit more of a magey person. So books, yeah, this like holy book kind of has the energy of what a wizard might have. So we chuck down there, and then we have like a staff next to it. And yeah, I think this is like a good way of getting across like the different types of characters. In a sort of metaphorical, but in a literal sense, like what characters do we have here? How are they approaching things? You know, we can see that their sort of stuff is around and they're sort of ready to go. They've got their backpacks, they're packed up. Maybe who's here? So like if this person's like being a bit tardy, if they're taking their time to pack down their tent, maybe they have a few clothes strewn around as well, and they're taking their sweet time. And they're a bit messier. We'd flesh out these a little, and soon enough we'd be done with our day campsite map. I like where this is at. It has a little bit of stories to tell. It has quite a bit going on, but it's not too much of an overload. And I think as like our first map for this campsite, it's a really, really good start. So I'm definitely happy with how this has turned out. Now it was on to our nighttime version. So we'd copy the map, then go through and delete all the assets which were time of the day specific, leaving us with an empty forest clearing camp scene. The first and major thing we'd need to figure out is how to make this a night scene. Although I'd seen it before, I'd never actually personally done it, and after some Googling, I'd be introduced to an incarnate mechanic I've never touched. Filters. Add new filter. Okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Night. Oh, this is super interesting. I didn't know all these existed. That's super useful to know. Great. And we're going to add night. There we go. It's nighttime. Amazing. Amazing. So this is a really good basis to build off. When we sort of add some lights, and now we need to learn how to add some lights. Truthfully, lighting is somewhat complicated, and we'd spend a fair amount of time messing around with it. What we'd end up with is a campfire that radiates light, the central point of light for the whole scene. A fun dynamic which really sets the atmosphere for a chill overnight camp in the forest, and since this is a scene map, setting that tone for the party's roleplay antics is the main intention of the map. With this, we'd move on to filling out our nighttime hang. Maybe let's get a bottle of wine, and then let's get some cups. Let's get some cups, and they can be drinking from them. We can really get the scene of, it's a merry old party collective, just hanging out, drinking wine, having a good time, things like that. With drinks and food placed, I wanted to fill out the personality of the characters, and while doing so, I wanted to integrate possible psychology they might have and how that might come through on the map. And the reason I'm putting it on the same spot is because if I went to a campsite and I sat down, like, I definitely would sort of have ownership of a spot. And if we go to this map here, we can see that the bard has sort of set up their stuff here. So maybe that's where the bard was sitting. And the next day when they were packing down, they went to the same spot. I think people are creatures of habits, and you know, maybe they could be sitting somewhere else, but having them sit sort of on this rock, being a bit of a performer, I think is probably what they would be like. And with that said, I think maybe we can have sort of a book where the wizard is sitting. So we can have like an open spell book here, and they're just like ruminating over notes. We'd make a few small tweaks and additions, like adding a lantern to have a second smaller source of light, and messing around with the sticks and axe to show what the party might have just done. But in less than 90 minutes, we had completed our 2 campsite maps. Yeah, awesome. So we have a nice daytime map, you know, and we can see that they're in the moment of like picking up their stuff, ready to go. And I like the nighttime map that we have, you know, them in the process of eating their food, they're doing dinner, they're cooking, maybe they're playing some music, reading a book. And I think there's a lot of personalities to these maps. I like the idea of like, you know, at night they're doing stuff and you can set an aura. So while the party are maybe making jokes, having a good time, you know, you can chuck this out. And then while they're packing up in the morning, you can chuck this one out. And maybe there's sort of fights can happen or anything like that. But even if it's just for role playing, I think these are really nice, fun sort of like role play maps just to chuck out. I'm really happy with how these turned out, and I'm keen to make some more scene maps in the future. I'm also keen to continue making different time of the day variants as well. It was a lot of fun and a cool challenge. And that's the video. If you yourself have experienced multiple times of the day, then subscribe to the channel. Check out some of the other content to get the full spectrum of the cycle of the sun, jump on the Patreon to support the channel and get access to all the maps. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!